Morning, punters. Morning. Early bird catches the worm. No, they don't. It's too early for the worms. First thing I'm going to do, I put YouTube on last night. Aristotle, that's where we're headed, right? But I put YouTube on to do a quick search. Before I had a chance to do anything, I see myself on TV. 1 month ago, Simon down. Just takes 30 seconds.
Paul Russell is a man who stands in his garage and talks to us about how the sun apparently doesn't make sense. He seems to have an issue with the speed of light and feels that light just works instantly wherever you are in the universe. Well, this week on Tinfoil Tuesday, Paul is taking one step further and going to try and debunk the solar eclipse.
Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with the sun. The sun's fine, it's perfectly fine. I do think there's something wrong with everybody else. I wasn't trying to debunk the solar eclipse. What I did do, though, was kind of prove that it's absolute light, because according to the 299,792 kilometers per second, it takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds for photons to arrive, hit the moon, which means the photons that are hitting the moon when people are in that sweet spot moment. Why is the sun still directly behind the moon? There is a gap of 8 minutes and 20 seconds, according to Disneyland, right? Why is the sun directly behind the moon at the very same time as it seems to be shining on the moon, which is then casting its shadow onto Earth? It's obvious, right? It hurts. Why is the sun directly behind the moon if it takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds? It's a very simple question, Simon Dan. I never did get a logical answer. I never have gotten a logical answer from anybody, because there is only one logical answer, and that is the sun's light is absolute. It doesn't take 8 minutes and 20 seconds for the sun to radiate its light to planet Earth. Now, Europe. Why have we got Europe up on the board? Because of Alexa's lies, and because Copernicus travelled down to Rome from Europe, from Poland. And I went, hang on a minute, it's not going for a vacation, right? It's not a weekend getaway. It would take a long time. Now, where are we? He was born in Turin. Right there, right? He's traveling down to Rome. About there. Now there are 15 centimeters on this ruler. 30 kilometers is 1 centimeter. Now, as the crow flies, that's one ruler, 2 rulers, and just over 10 centimeters. Let's call it 10 centimeters, right? That's 40 centimeters times 30 kilometers, that's 1,200 kilometers. As the crow flies, 1,200 kilometers, that's 700, 800 miles. 500 miles is 800. 500 to 750 miles. Now, when you get to, so we go through Czechoslovakia, right? We've then got Austria, and that would be Hungary. Comes down, now it's all mountains. So would he go round that way and come back down? Or he's not going to go down like to the Middle East, is he? I mean, this is Yugoslavia, all up there. This is a mountainous zone. Very, very rocky. We're talking 500 years ago, okay? There were no roads. They had no transport. There weren't airplanes and helicopters. This would have been the trip of a lifetime, okay? But the way they make it sound was all over the shop. Then I had a look at Tycho Brahe, just quickly, from Denmark. And I know Denmark pretty well. I used to go to Copenhagen. I used to drive from Münster in Germany, somewhere about there. Right? I don't know how many times I did that trip. I was traveling 100 miles an hour for about 2.5 hours solid. I used to catch the ferry, go across some of that choppy water, right? And go to Copenhagen. Tycho, he used to pop down for the weekend, didn't he? Rome, he used to go to, he went to Cologne, he went to, where else did he go? He went to Basel, he went to, now we're talking a long, long way. There are no cars. We're talking 500 years ago, okay? Anyway, on from there, I then kept seeing the name Aristotle. The same as Copernicus keeps coming up when we talk about Galileo and René Descartes and Johannes Kepler. They always bounce back to Copernicus. Well, Copernicus said, so we've seen some of the Copernicus absurdities. We have to go back to Aristotle because when you look at Copernicus, it bounces back even further. We are going back to approximately 350 BC, right? 350 BC. Now, I went to my popular book of science, I went to the index, and then to book 1, Aristotle. And in book 1, page 243, 244, 245, what we have is some Aristotle paraphernalia, right? Now, I'm not going to go through all of it. It's not up to me. I see things that people aren't seeing, okay? I can't not see them. They just hit me straight away when I see them. Now, I've underlined a couple of things about Aristotle, right? We're going to have a quick look at the laptop after because, holy smokes, right? Now, a couple of things I've underlined. The first thing, let's come over here. Aristotle, now this is 300, he was born in 384 BC and died in, trying to remember now, 322 or something. He was about 62, 324 BC. Here we go. Aristotle wrote, are you ready? On poetry and drama, politics, ethics, rhetoric, metaphysics, psychology, astronomy, meteorology, physics, mathematics, anatomy, and biology. Now, we thought Galileo was good, didn't we? We thought he was a bit of a legend, but now we are looking at 350 BC. He would have been about 2030 at this time. That is a hell of a lot of stuff to be writing about. It gets better. Aristotle thought of the heavens as a series of crystalline spheres set one within the other and turning about the earth, which was at the center of everything. Next to the earth was the sphere of the atmosphere. Then came 4 spheres corresponding to the 4 elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Beyond the sphere of fire was a region containing the ether. Now, where have we heard that before? Michelson and... I'm telling you, right? 4 elements, earth, water, fire. Beyond the sphere of fire was a region containing ether, a mysterious substance which was to be found in all heavenly bodies. Then came the 7 planetary spheres, each carrying a single planet, and another sphere carrying the fixed stars. At the outermost limits of the universe was the sphere of the prime mover. the first cause, which was the source and origin of all motion and life. It sounds very similar to some of the stuff like the ether, right? 350 BC. This is before the Bible, right? See, I have a lot of trouble accepting a lot of this. He arranged or classified living things according to the amount of soul stuff they possessed. His ladder of nature, as it was afterwards called, began with the lower plants and worked up through sponges, jellyfish, insects, reptiles, and fish to whales, mammals, and man. He believed that everything in the world was created for a purpose, that the end to which a thing is to be put determines its shape and structure. In his biological work, based on first-hand observations, Aristotle is at his best and comes closest to modern scientific method. For example, he discussed competently, ready? Listen to this. He discussed competently the life and breeding habits of about 540 species. As soon as I see this, my head just goes 365, that's a year. Get rid of the 5, 360 days, half that, that's 180. 360 plus 180 is 540. That's a year and a half, give or take a few days. That means if he did it in a year and a half, that would be one animal every single day for a year and a half to learn the lives and the breeding patterns, the breeding habits of 540 species. This right there is enough for me to know it's an absurdity, right? It's an absurdity. First of all, we're talking Greece, all right? Now, we're talking Greece. Greece is 80% mountainous. He was born somewhere about there, right? That's where he lived, where he grew up. 540 species of animals. It was said that he classified living things according to the amount of soul stuff they possessed. Whales. How many whales? How many whales do you see in Greece? 350 BC. This is where he hung. Right? Now, I could go on with this book for a while, but there's no point. So I'm going to get the laptop out straight away. Right? Because, mamma mia, che gelati. Right, here we go. Buckle up, Dorothy, it's about to get absurd. Now remember what I'm saying. I'm saying that most of this, if not all of it, has been fabricated. Nobody in 350 BC knew the lives, the behavior patterns and breeding patterns of 540 different species of animals. Poetry, politics, ethics, physics, meteorology, astronomy, the list. Galileo, you've got nothing on this man. Aristotle, right? Now I'm hoping to get to the parts that matter fastish, right? Right, so here again, his writings cover a broad range of subjects spanning the natural sciences, philosophy, linguistics, economics, politics, psychology, and the arts. As the founder of the peripatetic school of philosophy in the Lyceum in Athens, he began the wider Aristotelian tradition that followed, which set the groundwork for the development of modern science. Now, we hear standing on shoulders of giants. Right. So we've got little is known about Aristotle's life. He was born in the city of Stagira in northern Greece during the classical period. His father, and then it goes on. Wrote many treatises and dialogues for publication. Only around a third of his original output has survived. We have the usual stuff, right? Life. In general, the details of Aristotle's life are not well established. Biographies written in ancient times are often speculative, and historians only agree on a few salient points. How can anybody agree on anything? 350 BC, right? At the age of 17 or 18, Aristotle moved to Athens to continue his education at Plato's academy. He became distinguished as a researcher and lecturer, earning for himself the nickname Mind of the School by his tutor Plato. In Athens, he probably experienced the Eleusinian mysteries, as he wrote when describing the sights one viewed at the mysteries. To experience is to learn. I agree with that. Aristotle remained in Athens for nearly 20 years before leaving in 347 BC, after Plato's death. The traditional story about his departure records that he was disappointed with the academy's direction after control passed to Plato's nephew. They said that they didn't know too much, but all of a sudden, they seemed to know just about everything. In 343-342 BC, Aristotle was invited to Pella by Philip II of Macedon to become the tutor to his 13-year-old son, a choice perhaps influenced by the relationship, yada yada yada. 350 BC. How do they know this stuff, right? I mean, gosh, I could read all of it, but you guys, you need to look at this if you're interested, right? While Alexander Sake goes on, theoretical philosophy. With the prior analytics, Aristotle is credited with the earliest study of formal logic, right? Organon. Most of Aristotle's work is probably not in its original form because it was most likely edited by students and later lecturers. Right, now, we're getting there. Metaphysics. 350 BC. The word metaphysics appears to have been coined by the 1st century AD editor who assembled various small selections of Aristotle's works to create the treatise we know by the name Metaphysics. Now, where did this 1st century AD editor get these small selections of Aristotle's works to create the treatise, right? We're talking 350 BC to 1st century AD, that's 350 years. Where were these things? If there were no other independent things besides the composite natural ones, the study of nature would be the primary kind of knowledge. But if there is some motionless independent thing, the knowledge of this precedes it and is first philosophy, and it is universal in just this way because it is first. And it belongs to this sort of philosophy to study being as being, both what it is and what belongs to it, just by virtue of being. It's like Newton's laws, or it's written in the same format. The same people are writing this stuff, I'm telling you. Substance. Aristotle examines the concepts of substance and essence. The what it was to be in the metaphysics book, and he concludes that a particular substance is a combination of both matter and form. Now here we are talking about matter all of a sudden, right? A philosophical theory called hylomorphism. In book 8, he distinguishes the matter of the substance as the substratum, or the stuff of which it is composed. For example, the matter of a house is the bricks, stones, timbers, etc., or whatever constitutes the potential house, while the form of the substance is the actual house, what comes from it, namely covering for bodies and chattels, or any other differentia that let us define something as a house. The formula that gives the components is the amount of the matter, and the formula that gives the differentia is the account of the form. All of a sudden, 350 BC, we have equations. That rings a bell. Immanent realism. Like the teacher Plato, Aristotle's philosophy aims at the universal. Aristotle's ontology places the universal in particulars, things in the world, whereas for Plato, the universal is a separately existing form which actual things imitate. For Aristotle, form is still what phenomena are based on, but is instantiated in a particular substance. Then we've got a bit of Plato. Now, potentially and actually, concerning the nature of change, kinesis, and its causes, as he outlines in his Physics, and on generation and corruption, he distinguishes coming to be from, so it's in brackets, also translated as generation, close brackets, from, growth and diminution, which is change in quantity, locomotion, which is change in space, and alteration, which is change in quality. 3 laws. 3. A bit like Newton, a bit like Kepler. It's just the same. These are the things. It's a pattern, okay? I see patterns where other people don't. Aristotle's immanent realism means his epistemology is based on the study of things that exist or happen in the world and rises to knowledge of the universal, whereas for Plato, right, okay, natural philosophy, where is it? 2 seconds. Right. Natural philosophy. Aristotle's natural philosophy spans a wide range of natural phenomena, including those now covered by physics, biology, and other natural sciences. In Aristotle's terminology, natural philosophy is a branch of philosophy examining the phenomena of the natural world and includes fields that would be regarded today as physics, biology, and other natural sciences. Aristotle's work encompassed virtually all facets of intellectual inquiry. Aristotle makes philosophy in the broad sense coextensive with reasoning, which he also would describe as science. However, his use of the term science carries a different meaning than that covered by the term scientific method. For Aristotle, all science is either practical, poetical, or theoretical. Metaphysics. His practical science includes ethics and politics. His poetical science means the study of fine arts, including poetry. His theoretical science covers physics, mathematics, and metaphysics. Theoretical, right? Now, physics. In his Generation and Corruption, Aristotle related each of the 4 elements proposed earlier by Empedocles, earth, water, air, and fire, to 2 of the 4 sensible qualities, hot, cold, wet, and dry. Now, are we ready? Motion. There's 2 kinds of motion. This is Aristotle, 350 BC. Aristotle describes 2 kinds of motion, violent or unnatural motion, such as that of a thrown stone in the physics, and natural motion, such as of a falling object on the heavens. These are books. in violent motion, as soon as the agent stops causing it, the motion stops also. If I'm throwing a rock and I stop, the motion stops also, right? Such as a falling object. As soon as the agent stops causing it, the motion stops also. In other words, the natural state of an object is to be at rest. Now, where have we heard this stuff before? Since Aristotle does not address friction, with this understanding, it can be observed that, as Aristotle stated, heavy objects on the ground, say, require more force to make them move, and objects pushed with greater force move faster. This would imply the equation F equals mv. Incorrect in modern physics. Natural motion depends on the element concerned. The ether naturally moves in a circle around the heavens. Let's leave that. Now, where is it? Here we go. 350 BC. Aristotle implies that in a vacuum, the speed of fall would become infinite, and concludes from this apparent absurdity that a vacuum is not possible. Why on earth? Where is this coming from? 350 BC. 540 animals. He knows the lives and all of the breeding habits of 540 different animals. He's categorized whales near the top of the ladder. Whales in Greece. In a mountainous, it's 80% mountainous. Would he have even heard of a whale back in those days, right? How many people do you know who have seen whales? That's all I'm going to say. Opinions have varied on whether Aristotle intended to state quantitative laws. Henry Carterton held the extreme view that Aristotle's concept of force was basically qualitative, but other authors reject this. Here we go again. Which other authors? Who are these people, right? This is a well-written story. It has all of the ingredients of the other stories, right? How do people know all of this stuff? This is 350 years before the Bible, okay? This is where the absurdities start. They didn't start. They've made it look like they started there. Nobody knows this much about anybody, even 100 years ago. We're talking 2025. We're talking 2,400 years ago, right? Archimedes corrected Aristotle's theory that bodies move towards their natural resting places. Metal boats can float if they displace enough water. Aircraft carriers, as you know, the 3 pyramids on the Giza Plateau weighed the equivalent of 135 battle-ready Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. The Egyptians had nothing to do with those pyramids. Aristotle's writings on motion remained influential until the early modern period. John Philoponus in late antiquity and Galileo, here's the link. And Galileo in the early modern period are said to have shown by experiment that Aristotle's claim that a heavier object falls faster than a light object is incorrect. A contrary opinion is given by Carlo Rovelli, who argues that Aristotle's physics of motion is correct within its... Look, bar, bar, bar. Now there's one more. We've got the 4 causes. 4 causes, right? Aristotle suggested that the reason for anything coming about could be attributed to 4 different types of simultaneously active factors. His term Aisha is traditionally translated as cause, but it does not always refer to temporal sequence. It might be better translated as explanation, but the traditional rendering will be employed here. Material cause describes the material out of which something is composed. I'm jumping. The formal cause is its form, the arrangement of that matter. The efficient cause is the primary source, or that from which the change under consideration proceeds. The final cause is its purpose, the reason why a thing exists or is done, including both purposeful and instrumental actions and activities. Optics. Aristotle describes experiments in optics using a camera obscura in Problems, Book 15. The apparatus consisted of a dark chamber with a small aperture that let light in. With it, he saw that whatever shape he made the hole, the sun's image always remained circular. He also noted that increasing the distance between the aperture and the image surface magnified the image. Chance and spontaneity. According to Aristotle, spontaneity and chance are causes of some things, distinguishable from other types of cause, such as simple necessity. Chance is an incident. Astronomy. In astronomy, Aristotle refuted Democritus' claim, I'm not going back that far, no, that the Milky Way was made up of those stars which are shaded by the Earth from the sun's rays, pointing out partly correctly that if the size of the sun is greater than that of the Earth, and the distance of the stars from the Earth many times greater than that of the sun, then the sun shines on all the stars and the Earth screens none of them. He also wrote descriptions of comets, including the great comet of 371 BC, of course. Geology and natural sciences. Aristotle was one of the first people, of course, to record any geological observations. He stated that geological change was too slow to be observed in one person's lifetime. That's fairly common sense, right? Unless you're looking at a beach erosion from the waves. The geologist Charles noted that Aristotle described such change, including lakes that Meteorologica lends its name to the modern study of meteorology, but its modern usage diverges from the content of Aristotle's ancient treatise on meteors. The ancient Greeks did use the term for a range of atmospheric phenomena, but also for earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Aristotle also made many observations about the hydrological cycle, that's the water. For example, he made some of the earliest observations about desalination. He observed early and correctly, that when seawater is heated, fresh water evaporates and that the oceans are then replenished by the cycle of rainfall. I have proved by experiment that salt water evaporated forms fresh, and the vapor does not. When it condense into seawater again. Biology. I mean, if you ever went for a job, you'd take ages to write a resume out, wouldn't you? Or he'd just say just everything. What experience? Everything. 540 animals. Motion, ethics, logic, politics, the ether, everything. 540 animals, all their breeding habits. Okay, you're overqualified. Move along. Aristotle reports on the sea life visible from observation on Lesbos and the catches of fishermen. He describes the catfish, electric ray and frogfish in detail, as well as cephalopods, cephalopods such as the octopus and paper nautilus. It goes on and on. He gives accurate descriptions of the four-chambered forestomachs of ruminants and of the ovoviviparous embryological development of the hound shark. He notes that an animal's structure is well matched to function, so birds like the heron, yada yada yada, right? Aristotle came to the theory of evolution, right? Noted these sorts of differences between similar kinds of animal, but unlike Aristotle, used the data to come to the theory of evolution. Who did? Darwin too noted these sorts of differences. Aristotle's writings can seem to modern readers close to implying evolution, But while Aristotle was aware that new mutations or hybridizations could occur, he saw these as rare accidents. For Aristotle, accidents like heat waves in winter must be considered distinct from natural causes. And then, Aristotle did not do experiments in the modern sense. He used the ancient Greek term papyromenoi to mean observations, right? Instead, he practiced a different style of science, systematically gathering data, discovering patterns common to whole groups of animals and inferring possible causal explanations from these. This style is common in modern biology when large amounts of data become available in a new field, such as genomics. It does not result in the same certainty as experimental science, but it sets out testable hypotheses. From the data he collected and documented, Aristotle inferred quite a number of rules. Here we go. Relating the life history features of the live-bearing tetrapods. Among these correct predictions are the following. Brood size decreasing, classification of living things. In the book it says 540. Here we've got 500. Aristotle distinguished about 500 species of animals, arranging these in the history of animals in a graded scale of perfection, a non-religious version of the Scala Naturae, with man at the top. His system had 11 grades of animal from highest potential to lowest, expressed in their form at birth. The highest gave live birth to hot and wet creatures. The lowest laid cold, dry, mineral-like eggs. Animals came above plants, and these in turn were above minerals. He grouped what the modern zoologists would call vertebrates at the hotter animals with blood, and below them the colder invertebrates as animals without blood. Those with blood were divided into the live-bearing mammals, and the egg-laying birds, reptiles, fish. Those without blood were insects, crustacea, non-shelled, cephalopods, and shelled. And the hard-shelled mollusks. Now this, he was in politics at the same time, and ethics, and logic, and you name it, right? He recognized that animals did not exactly fit into a linear scale and noted various exceptions, such as that sharks had a placenta. He noted that sharks had a placenta like the tetrapods. To a modern biologist, the explanation not available to Aristotle is convergent evolution. Philosophers of science have generally concluded that Aristotle was not interested in taxonomy, but zoologists who studied this question in the early 21st century think otherwise. He believed that purposive final causes guided all natural processes. This teleological view justified his observed data as an expression of formal design. Aristotle's Scala Naturae, highest to lowest, man, cat, hare, dolphin, whale, 350 BC, Greece, whale. Maybe. Birds, bee-eater, nightjar, chameleon, crocodile. Greece, 350 BC. Crocodile, you've probably heard about crocodiles. Snakes, water snake, ottoman, viper, sea bass, parrotfish, shark, skate, shrimp, crab, squid, octopus, cockle, trumpet, snail, ant, cicada, sponges, worms, fig, iron. Psychology. Aristotle's psychology, given in his treatise on the soul, posits three kinds of soul, psyches: the vegetative soul, the sensitive soul, and the rational soul. Humans have all three. The vegetative soul is concerned with growth and nourishment. The sensitive soul experiences sensations and movement. The unique part of the human rational soul is its ability to receive forms of other things and to compare them using the intellect and logos, reason. This is probably where the soul was introduced to humanity. For Aristotle, the soul is the form of a living being. because all beings are composites of form and matter, the form of living beings is that which endows them with what is specific to living beings, the ability to initiate movement, or in the case of plants, growth and transformations, which Aristotle considers types of movement. In contrast to earlier philosophers, but in accordance with the Egyptians, he placed the rational soul in the heart rather than in the brain. Notable is Aristotle's division of sensation and thought, which generally differed from the concepts of previous philosophers, with the exception of Alcmaeon. I'm actually interested in this now I've started, but obviously some people might go, oh, you might be falling asleep to it. It is not up to anybody else. Everybody has this. Everybody should be able to look at this and go, hang on a minute. I think this just keeps going. In On the Soul, Aristotle famously criticizes Plato's theory of the soul and develops his own in response. The first criticism is against Plato's view of the soul in the timeless, that the soul takes up space and is able to come into physical contact with bodies. Memory. According to Aristotle, in On the Soul, memory is the ability to hold a perceived experience in the mind and to distinguish between the internal appearance and an occurrence in the past. In other words, the memory is a mental picture, a phantasm that can be recovered. Aristotle uses the term memory for the actual retaining of an experience. Because Aristotle believes people receive all kinds of sense perceptions and perceive them as impressions, people are continually weaving together new impressions of experiences. Aristotle believed a chain of thought which ends in a recollection of certain impressions was connected systematically in relationships such as similarity, contrast, and contiguity. Described in his laws of association, Aristotle believed that past experiences are hidden within the mind. A force operates to awaken the hidden material to bring up the actual experience. Dreams. Dreams do not involve actual sensing a stimulus. One component of Aristotle's theory of dreams disagrees with practical philosophy. Sorry, Galileo, I'm afraid your time is up. Aristotle considered ethics to be practical rather than theoretical study, one aimed at becoming good and doing good rather than knowing for its own sake. He wrote several treatises, of course he did, when he wasn't doing animals and politics and the ether and astronomy, astrology, metaphysics, science, normal physics, the other one in between the physics. Aristotle taught that virtue has to do with the proper function of a thing. An eye is only a good eye in so much as it can see, because the proper function of an eye is sight. The same people are writing all of this stuff, and they've made it up. Aristotle taught that to achieve a virtuous and potentially happy character requires a first stage of having the fortune to be habituated, not deliberately, but by teachers and experience, leading to a later stage in which one consciously chooses to do the best things. Listen, I speed read this once and didn't read all of it, right? But I knew there were bits everywhere, which is why I'm going through them. Listen. And I only just picked up on this one, right? Aristotle taught that to achieve a virtuous and potentially happy character requires a first stage of having the fortune to be habituated, not deliberately, but by teachers and experience. By teachers. Now, teachers, education. Aristotle suggested, he says that is the best way for children to be taught by teachers, leading to a later stage in which one consciously chooses to do the best things. When the best people come to live life this way, their practical wisdom and their intellect can develop with each other towards the highest possible human virtue. the wisdom of an accomplished theoretical or speculative thinker, or in other words, a philosopher. Politics. Well, he did politics in 350 BC in Greece, 80% mountainous. Politics. The common modern understanding of a political community as a modern state is quite different from Aristotle's understanding of politics. I'm not even going to go into the politics. For we all agree that the most excellent man should rule, i.e. the supreme by nature, and that the law rules and alone is authoritative. But the law is a kind of intelligence, i.e. a discourse based on intelligence. And again, what standard do we have? What criterion of good things that is more precise than the intelligent man? For all that man will choose, for all that this man will choose, if the choice is based on his knowledge, are good things and their contraries are bad. And since everybody chooses most of all what conforms to their own proper dispositions, a just man choosing to live justly, a man with bravery to live bravely, likewise a self-controlled man to live with self-control. It is clear that the intelligent man will choose most of all to be intelligent, for this is the function of that capacity. Hence, it's evident that, according to the most authoritative judgment, intelligence is supreme among goods. Economics. When he wasn't doing... Aristotle made substantial contributions to economic thought, especially to thought in the Middle Ages. In politics, Aristotle addresses the city, property, and trade. His response to criticisms of private property in Lionel Robbins' view anticipated let's not. Aristotle's discussions on retail and interest, 350 BC. Retail and interest was a major influence on economic thought in the Middle Ages. He had a low opinion of retail. How many retail stores were there in 350 BC in mountainous Greece? How many retail? Woolies, Coles, IGA? He had a low opinion of retail, believing that contrary to using money to procure things one needs in managing the household, retail trade seeks to make a profit. It thus uses goods as a means to an end rather than as an end unto itself. He believed that retail trade was in the way unnatural. Similarly, Aristotle considered making a profit through interest unnatural, as it makes a gain out of the money itself and not from its use. Aristotle gave a summary of the function of money that was perhaps remarkably precocious for its time. He wrote that because it's impossible to determine the value of every good through account of the number of other goods, He wrote that because it is impossible to determine the value of every good through account of the number of other goods it is worth, the necessity arises of a single universal standard of measurement. Money thus allows for the association of different goods and makes them commensurable. He goes on to state that money is also useful for future exchange, making it a sort of security. That is, if we do not want a thing now, we shall be able to get it when we want it. Rhetoric. Yeah, rhetoric as well. Aristotle's rhetoric proposes that a speaker can use three basic kinds of appeals to persuade his audience. Ethos, an appeal to the speaker's character. Pathos, an appeal to the audience's emotion. And logos, an appeal to logical reasoning. He also categorizes rhetoric into three genres: epidietic, forensic, and deliberative. Let's not. Poetics. Of course he did poetics. You didn't think he didn't, did you? Aristotle writes in his Poetics that epic poetry, tragedy, comedy, dithyrambic poetry, painting, sculpture, music, and dance are all fundamentally acts. Okay. What is believed that Aristotle's Poetics originally comprised two books, one on comedy and one on tragedy. Only the portion that focuses on tragedy has survived. Unfortunate. Aristotle taught that tragedy is composed of 6 elements. Now, he's a hell of a guy, isn't he? He really is, right? Tragedy is composed of 6 elements: plot structure, character, style, thought, spectacle, and lyric poetry. The characters in a tragedy are merely a means of driving the story and the plot, not the characters. Is the chief focus of tragedy imitation of action arousing pity and fear, and is meant to affect the catharsis of those same emotions? Let's leave that. Gender and sexuality. Of course Aristotle covered everything. Aristotle never wrote a specific work on women. However, he asserted the existence of differences between men and women throughout his biological, political, and ethical works. For most female animals, including human women, Aristotle maintains that they are for the most part physically smaller and of a more cowardly constitution. Women are generally smaller, guys are generally bigger, and cowardly constitution, well, if it was a battle against men and women, it's not about cowardly, I think it's about common sense, isn't it? They're not going to go to war against the men. Transmission. More than 2,300 years after his death, Aristotle remains one of the most influential people who ever lived. Is it him being influential 2,300 years ago? Or is it the people that wrote this stuff having pumped this into humanity's library, if you will, 100 years ago, 150 years ago? Who can say that that is not the truth? Who was here 150 years ago? The only people who have the continuity to know what is going on are things like the church. They go back the furthest, don't they? They go back the furthest. Nowadays we have things like NASA, we've got the church, we've got the United Nations. These entities that maintain continuity, they pass the baton onto the next person, onto their son or their grandson, or they keep the baton going between themselves. They've got a bit of history because they know what's been happening a couple hundred years, 300 years, 500 years, and they maintain chaos for all of us. So we do not really have any continuity. My dad never passed anything down to me. I'm trying to pass stuff down to my kids, but proper continuity, organized continuity, like an institution. How would you even start to catch up with something like the church, right? So that in 200 years from now, the church would have all of its stuff, but let's say some of us managed to continue this kind of thing, pointing things out so that people were aware that, hang on, maybe all is not what it seems. Because I guarantee you, all is not what it seems. All is not what it seems. Among countless other achievements, Aristotle was the founder of formal logic, I like. Pioneered the study of zoology and left every future scientist and philosopher in his debt through his contributions to the scientific method. Greece, 350 BC. Tanelli Kukkonen observed that his achievement in founding 2 sciences is unmatched, and his reach in influencing every branch of intellectual enterprise, including Western ethical and political theory, theology, rhetoric, and literary analysis, is equally long. As a result, Kukkonen argues any analysis of reality today will almost certainly carry Aristotelian overtones. Evidence of an exceptionally forceful mind wrote that an account of Aristotle's intellectual afterlife would be little less than a history of European thought. Influential, but was it 350 BC? Because this sounds incredibly like a lot of the stories that I hear. Aristotle has been called the father of logic, biology, political science, zoology, embryology, natural law, scientific method, rhetoric, psychology, realism, criticism, individualism, teleology, and meteorology. His successor, Theophrastus, for another time. Now, that was a mouthful. Now, what we have is you thought Galileo was good. You thought Kepler was good. But compared to Aristotle, the funny thing is, this is 350 BC, right? And then it goes incredibly quiet. Really quiet. So quiet, in fact, that I got the history of the timetable of history out. Another book. Now let's not forget something either. Guess where all of these books are published? US of A. How come the US has got all of this information and it's them that's publishing it? Why? Why is that? Why is Italy and Europe not publishing their own stuff? Why is everything coming from America? It's just one of those things. It's a pattern, okay? The timetables of history, I'm going to think, how long have I been going? Let's say 45? 56. Oh no. Oh, mamma mia. Now, look, just quickly. It starts at 5000 BC. Right? 5000 to 1000 BC. Who knows all of this stuff? We've got history and politics, literature and theatre, religion, philosophy and learning, visual arts, music, science, technology and growth, and daily life for 5,000 years. Where? Who's got all of this information? What I can tell you, because I had a quick scan, is from about 400 to 350 BC. Here's a science thing, right? So we get a couple of little things. It's like Euclid, Optica, physician, Archimedes, Greek mathematician. We've got all of these little things, right? And then let's go over and a couple of little things. So we're talking from 100 BC to 50 AD. It's 150 years, again, nothing. A couple of little things. What's that? Portents of Magnesia, Greece and its history of art. Ptolemy draws 26 maps of various countries, but it's all, now we're at 400 AD, right? But there's never much until, look, see, now we're at 525. Cosmas Indicus, explorer and geographer of Alexandria, travels up the Nile and writes his topographic Christians, the first paddle wheel, but awfully quiet. So all of that stuff that Aristotle did in 350 BC in mountainous Greece, 80% mountainous, right? 350 BC, there's nothing. 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 We are now at 580. Oh, Alexander of Tralles, De Re Medica. Nothing. We have first authenticated record of decimal reckoning in India in the year 595. Book printing in China in the year 600 AD. Construction of the Ao Chi Bridge in China, 606. The Swan Qing 10 classic scientific. You know what I'm saying though? Look, nothing. 1. Prime of the first surgical developments in India, 650 AD. Nothing. Why did Aristotle bother? Where was all of his works? Hundreds of years. Anyway, water wheels from mills. Look, we can keep going. And look, nothing. 1. Astronomer. Right? But then, when we get to 1400s, which Copernicus pops up, now we're cooking with some gas again. Zip. See, there's 5. There's right 2 there. 4, but we start to pick up the pace. Big ones. Look, oh, hello. Now we're cooking, aren't we? Up to modern day. So, very strange that it went quiet for almost 1500 years after Aristotle. All of that stuff. Isn't it strange how it just... And then this lot come up, Copernicus. So much is related back to Aristotle, like they knew each other, but it hadn't been mentioned for 1,500 years. Guys, I'm telling you, this is very, very odd. If you can read between the lines, they are making out that these things happened to justify the stuff that they get up to today. Right? All the Copernicus, Galileo, Tycho Brahe, Kepler, 1609, he worked out planetary motion. How? He was stuck in one place. How? He couldn't travel to the other side of the planet and see what these things, right? Joseph Lagrange, 1772, the three-body solution. What's he doing working out gravity? Good job he did though, because that's where the JWS is, the telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope. It's in Lagrange point 2. Sun, Earth, Lagrange point 2. Because of the gravity pull of the Sun and the Earth, there's a zone called Lagrange point 2, discovered in 1772, before electricity, before anything. Same as when Olaus Roma worked out the speed of light, before electricity, 200 years before electricity, by observing Io, a moon. It didn't happen. Christian Huygens, the wave theory of light, 1674. Waves propagate, and another wave front, and another wave front appears, and another wave front appears, and thus light is propagated. Guys, history has been partly made up. I guarantee you, I know for a fact that I'm right. If you cannot see what I'm saying, right, it's because of what you've already been taught and it's not letting you be objective enough. That is the only reason. 540 species of animal he could competently speak about their lives and their breeding habits. 540 animals. Philosophy, meteorology, rhetoric, logic, metaphysics, physics, politics, ethics, everything. Greece, 80% mountainous. 350 BC, 350 years before, El Dom came, right? No. All right, I'm gonna go and have a coffee and try not to fall asleep posting this, making reels. Look, yesterday morning I fell asleep. I had 16 or 18 reels to do, right? And I finished in here late, and I went and lied down on my bed and got my phone out to right, and we'll start doing reels. And it was only 18. It was only 18. And I fell asleep on the second one. When I woke up this morning, I was like, oh shit. Both the first one and two, one had 290 views and the second one had 310. Now the way I do my reels, I do 1 of 16, 2 of 16, and I do see people, a lot of people, they watch them one after the other because the numbers go fast. I'm sorry, I fell asleep. What I do 70 to 80% of the time, I throw them onto YouTube and Rumble first. So if you see my reels pop up on Instagram and Facebook, and then I stop at 3 and you're interested, there's a very good chance that I've already put the whole lot on YouTube and it's lowercase PTGR12, that's at YouTube, and Rumble do you know how much easier it would be for me if people just went to these two and viewed my stuff there? I understand I'm getting thousands and thousands of views, but I've just done an hour, right? I have to now do 1.5 minute reels, and I will do them, right? But what I'm saying is, go to YouTube, because once I get the views up there, hopefully people are interested enough in this stuff. I know what I am talking about, Simon Dan. Capital I, Indigo, C1, that's at Rumble. Guys, don't be scared. I'm not making any money out of it. I only make money out of it if I get something like 50,000 subscribers or something. Guys, I'm not in this for the money. I've been doing it for 3 years now. This is not about the money. This is about knowledge. I'm trying to teach people how to think. I'm trying to make you understand that you need to trust your own judgment more and stop believing everything that you're told, because the lies and deception are real. Okay? Peace. See you later. Go have a coffee.